As kol kavod to everybody who braved the pre-snow weather, if it's going to make it, right? I told my Talmidot that if it does snow, get up real early and you get to the kotel right before everybody starts walking around. Beautiful pictures. So that doesn't happen that often. But Bezrat Hashem. Okay. So it's nice to be here week after week because it sort of makes things more like we're Ramish learning together, less formal. So we're going to do a topic. You can see I'm working on brachos more this year. So we're all familiar, right? Smichas, Gאולה, letfilah. We've grown up with that and the idea of connecting up Gal Yisrael to the Shmona Asrei. And that's we're going to dive deeper into this topic and see that there's a number of nafkaminos brought down la halacha and how you understand it exactly. You should just know at the back on the very last page there's a siddur, like a short siddur that maybe we'll come to it actually together at some point. But in case you want to just remind yourselves of exactly. I find that whenever I have to remember something is exactly when I can't remember it. So therefore, that's why I want to have you have a siddur over there in front of you. So let's begin with the Gemara and Brachos on Daf Dalet Amud Bet number 1 on your page. Amar Mar, Korei Kriyat Shema Mitpalel. We have a brisa in which they say that the order of things is that first you say Kriyat Shema, and then afterwards you go into the Tfilat Shmona Asrei. So that sounds like, okay, we all, right? That's what we always do. We do that in the morning, Shachris. We also do it at Mariv. So, but believe it or not, there's an argument over here. This brisa is going to be Messiah le the Rabbi Yochanan. Actually assists Rabbi Yochanan in his opinion. The Omar Rabbi Yochanan, not only in the morning do we say Kriyat Shema and then connect into Shmona Asrei, but Ezuhu ben Olam Haba, Ze Asomech Gאולה letfilah shel Arvit. That even at night, you should be connecting, first say Ga'al Yisrael, and then from there head into the Tfilah. And this is Rabbi Yochanan's opinion for both Shacharis and Mariv. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi has a different opinion. The Gemara has their machlokas based on Sfar and based on the Psukim, but according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, at night it's going to dafka be Shmona Asrei and then Kriyat Shema. Kriyat Shema, because at night b'shachbecha, when you lay down. So he pushes Kriyat Shema off to a later point. But I don't want to get into that argument over here. What I do want to just point out is that Rabbi Yochanan is like this author of the idea that a person is a ben olam haba if you're somech ga'ula letfilah both b'shachris and arvit. Rashi explains in number 2 why is this so important. First of all, Rabbi Yochanan says his din by Mariv. Rashi says for kol shekain de shacharit, for sure in shachar that's a given that you have to first say Ga'al Yisrael and then go to Shmona Asrei. The ikar gulat Mitzrayim b'shacharit hava. That's when we actually left Mitzrayim. K'dichtiv mimorchat haPesach yitzu b'nei Yisrael. So that we gave on the Yud Dalid, we offered up the Korban Pesach, and then the next morning is when we left. Usmichat Gאולה letfilah Ramza David b'Sefer Tehillim. We also have that David is referring to this concept. Dichtiv Hashem tzuri v'go ali. That first we have the idea of Gאולה, that God redeems us, and then the next a few pasukim later on, v'samich le'yancha Hashem b'yom tzara, when we stand in front of God and we supplicate our needs. V'amina b'barachos in Yushalmi, mi she'eno somech Gאולה letfilah l'mahu domeh. This gives a little bit, Rashi's giving us a little bit of a reason behind the idea that a person who doesn't do it, he's domeh la'ovot shel melach. So somebody who's close to the king, sheba v'tafacha pitcho shel melach, came and knocks on the door of the king, yatza melech, that the king finally gets to the door, and when he opens it, Matzah Sheflig Afhu, so Matzah Sheflig finds that the friend didn't stick around. He knocked and then he left. Afhu Iflig, so the king also walks away. Eliyah Dam Mekarev LaKadosh Baruch Hu Elav. But what really should be is you come, you knock on the door, and Meratzeyu B'Tishbachot, and you build your understanding of your relationship with God by saying praises of God. In other words, giving a definition to your relationship, V'kilu Son. Shel Yitzias Mitzrayim, and you talk about the big picture of Am Yisrael leaving Mitzrayim, v'hu mitkarev elav, and then you get closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you recognize that Hashem is so much part of our basic identity as being Jews, and the whole story. And once you have that down, ubodo karov elav, when you're still thinking about your closeness with Hashem, yesh lo litvor tzrachav. That's appropriate at that point for you to step in and say, listen, Kadosh Baruch Hu, we talked about this last year. Either you say, this is what we need, or Rav Chaim Ibalazhin, right? We talked about it, that you stand up there and say, okay, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to partner with you right now, and let's discuss where you should be placing your benevolence. And that would be your Shmona Aseh. Different way of looking at things. And that's the connection up. So the Gemara is now going to get into the sugya, number 3 on your page. The Gemara says the following. Meisiv Mar Berei de Ravina. So Mar Berei de Ravina has a question. We have a different law, Brisa Be'erev Mivarich Shtayim Lefaneha U Shtayim La'achareha. That we know that Kriyat Shema comes along with brachot before and after it. So at night, you say 2 brachot beforehand, and then after saying Kriyat Shema, there's 2 brachot that come afterwards. Right? Emes V'emunah Kozos, and it's going to end up Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. And then right after that, at night, we add another bracha. What's the other bracha? Hashkiveinu Hashem Elokeinu L'Shalom. So wait a second here. We have an interruption. It looks like we do have an interruption between Ga'al Yisrael and starting Shmona Asrei. So the Gemara asks, V'i amrit ba'i lismoch, if you're telling me, like Rabbi Yochanan, that I have to connect up Ga'al Yisrael, Geula, to the Tefillah, halo kosamach Geula L'Tefillah in this case, tahabai l'meimar hashkivenu, because you have to say the extra bracha of hashkivenu, and that's going to separate out the bracha of Ga'al Yisrael to when you stand up in Shmona Asrei.
You have another one in the Chusparis, they say,
Yeruinenu, Baruch Hashem Le'olam Amen V'Amen. We'll get to that. It ends with the bracha also. We're going to talk about that. Thank you. We're going to talk about that.
Not all places do that. I think the Magen Avraham doesn't hold by that. Because there's one shul I went to and I said, why didn't you do this? And he said, Magen Avraham.
Yes, and also the Vilna Gaon, and like that's why it's so prevalent in Yerushalayim not to do it. So we're going to get to that. We really will get to that. Omri, Kivan Takinu Rabban. So the Gemara answers, Kivan the Takinu Rabban and Hashkivenu, because the rabbis put in Hashkivenu over there, Ki Geula Arichta Damya. So we're going to look at it as being one Geula Arichta Aroch. It's comparable to one long Geula. Yes, it's true that you just finished saying Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, but Ki Geula, it's still like one Geula. Why? Because Hashkivenu, I know, how would you understand that? Then the bracha of Hashkivenu, how does it become like one thing? And the Gemara, by the way, first let's read the rest of the Gemara and then we'll discuss it. The Ilo Temahachi, Gemara says, you gotta say this. It's like one long Geula. Shachris Hechan Matzi Samach, because also you have a question in Shachris. Ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan, but Tchila, before you start Shmona Asrei, you say Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. Now Hashem Sefasai Tiftach is a pasuk from Tehillim. It leads us off into saying Shmona Asrei. Shmona Asrei is a Takanas Chachamim, the Nusach at least. That means there is an add-on to the beginning of Shmona Asrei as well. So even though in the morning we say Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, and the whole place goes quiet, but you're going to have that one pasuk from Tehillim, Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, that separates out before you start Shmona Asrei. Uvasofa Omer, says Rabbi Yochanan, we also add at the end of your davening, Yehu Ratzonim Reifi Ve'yoni Bilefanecha, also from Tehillim. So we see that there's add-ons to the Shmona Asrei on the bookends. Elahasam Kivin to Takinu Rabbanan Lamema Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, that because they said Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, Kitfila Richta Damya, it meant it sort of enlarged. It enlarged Shmona Asrei. It made it a longer Shmona Asrei. Hachanami, here too you have to say Kivin to Takinu Rabbanan Lamema Hashkivenu Kigula Richta Damya. When they added in the bracha Hashkivenu, it's like as if you stretched out the Geula. This is an interesting approach. So what do they mean exactly, Kigula Richta Damya? So first let's start out with Hashem Sefasai Tiftach. That's easy. Why is that called a Tefillah Richta? What are we saying?
It's asking God to accept what we've done.
Yeah, it's so thematic, right? Hashem Sefasai Tiftach, open my lips, let me be able to, and then you walk in. So we understand the place for that pasuk. It's a lead-in right into Shmona Asrei. It's so connected up thematically. So of course it's part of the tefillah. Okay? So therefore, what should I be looking for when I say Hashkivenu is Ki Geula Arichta Damya? I'd like to look for it to also be thematically similar to Ga'al Yisrael. So if you look at number 4, the Rif, he quotes the Gemara. He says, Afagad de tzorach lomar hashkivenu ben geula l'tefila lo mafsiku. The obvious question, it's a hafsaka, it's a separation. Why is it not hafsaka? To keep in the kinu rabbanan hashkivenu b'geula. Once the chachamim enact hashkivenu, ki geula rich the damya. The Rif is using the same exact lashon of the Gemara, and the Tamidim in back of brachos printed on the page is we call it the Rabbeinu Yonah. It seems like it's the Tamidim of the Rabbeinu Yonah that they write in number 5. What's the svara over here? Yeah, we want it to be thematically similar. Hashkivenu is thematically similar. It is a matter of geula. How does that fit in? How do you say it's a matter of geula? Shebishah shavar Hashem l'gofet Mitzrayim. When God passed over the houses of Egypt to kill Makas Bechoros, hayu mafchidin u'mitzpalalim leborei kol olamim lekayem divaro. The Jewish people were frightened, and they davened to Hashem that He should keep up with His word being that He's going to pass over the Jewish people's houses, and the God will not allow that the mashchit, the angel of destruction, the destroyer, should not be allowed into their houses. Why? Hashem promised. They're always worried that because of a chait, maybe, it won't work out. And therefore they were davening that the angel of death should pass over them, ukeneged otot tefila. And because of that approach, which is part of the Geula story, hitkinu lamar every night, hashkivenu. Shiatzilenu mikol davara, that God should protect us, v'yishmor tzeseinu v'reinu, protect us going in and out. V'kiven hitkinu lamar keneged mashaya b'shasa Geula. And being that the prompt for this, what would look like a general prayer, but the prompt of it is coming out of the time of the Geula. Amud Elohavi Hafsaka to Geula Arichta Damya. So it's thematically similar to the original bracha, and therefore it's Geula Arichta. If you look at the Siddur, so for that it fits in. That first bracha Ta Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, in the English. Liberated us from hands of kings, who redeemed us from the grasp of all tyrants. It's pretty general at first, but then about halfway down, He performed miracles for us and vengeance upon Paro, signs and wonders in the lands of the Hamite. He slew in His wrath all the firstborn of Egypt and brought out His people. This is straight up Yetzias Mitzrayim. So that's not a problem. Now if you look then at Hashkivenu, I'm heading towards the English, Hashem our God, make us lie down in peace. Our King, raise us again to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Pretty general at first. And direct us to better ourselves through your good counsel. Shield us and remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword. Remove the adversary from before us and behind us, and shelter us in the shadow of your rings. It stays pretty general, right? But their understanding is that this originally, it could fit in that to shelter us in the shadow of your, in other words, protect us. This idea of Hashem being a protector and rescuer, that started out when we were in Mitzrayim, and therefore it's going to relate back to the Geula, and therefore it's thematically similar, and therefore it becomes a Geula Arichta. So far, so good, right? Ke Geula Arichta. Okay. And this is, again, I think a lot of us grew up with this understanding, because this is the usual approach to it. But let's go back to the first page, and let's take a look at the Rambam. So the Rambam, I'll read it, let's read through it, and you'll tell me if what catches your fancy here. Says the Rambam, number 6, on the first page. We'll go back to the beginning. Ve'af al pi, says the Rambam, ve'af al pi shemavarech hashkivenu. You got that very first page? Very, very, very front.
Somebody divided up the page.
So do we have an extra?
Yeah, we have it.
We got it.
Okay, number 6.
It's actually on the second page.
Okay, I have the original before it was sent over. So number 6, and you'll tell me if it's different. So says the Rambam, and even though you're saying hashkivenu, and obviously what's the question of the Rambam? You're supposed to have a smicha of the geula to the tefila. Eino hafsaka ben geula tefila. Harei shteihem kibracha achat arucha. Alright, so the Rambam also says it's like one long bracha. Anybody have anything to comment at this point?
Baruch Hashem Gal Yisrael is kind of a chatima, so you wouldn't think it would be joined on.
Correct, and that's why it's only going to be Kigula. But the Rambam may be at this point, yeah. It's after Gal Yisrael, so what exactly did the Gemara mean, Kigula Arichta? But more so, and the answer is sort of bold printed in front of you, let's look at number 7. The Migdalos is a Rishon. He says, and this is a cloud we know about the Rambam, V'Rav Moshe Zal, the Rambam, Ein min hagol l'shanot lo shana Gemara. The Rambam, his minhag is not to change the wording of the Gemara, b'chol zeh chibur, throughout the Yad Chazaka, kasher ochachti kama pamim, as the Migdalos has proven numerous times, the Adarab, the opposite, be true, Tofes Lashon HaTalmud, V'sidro b'chol yecholto. The Rambam often will quote up, straight up, the Lashon of the Gemara. He tries to stay close to the Lashon of the Gemara as when he can, unless he's explaining something in further details. So what did the Rambam change over here in number 6?
Bracha instead of Gula.
Right, he took out the idea that it's a Gula Arichta. The Rambam over here says that it is a bracha aruka. It becomes like one long bracha. So it seems like the Rambam, like you're saying, it's after Gal Yisrael. I can't say it's Gula Arichta. And not only that, if you look at Hashkivenu, we just did over here, all right? Is it thematically similar to Gal Yisrael? It's more about protecting. The God should protect us as we lay down. The nighttime is no lights, especially if you go back before modern times. The nighttime is pretty challenging. And this idea of like we're laying down a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and as we go to sleep, we're also protected. And just the idea of protection from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So it seems that the Rambam was not very taken by what the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah said when they tried to say that it's thematically similar. But the Rambam looks at it as being not thematically similar. And the reason that it's thrown in is number 9 on the page, Ritva, Daha isba nami, is this 9 by you? Daha itba nami geula mishedim and mikol davara v'yishmort seisenu ve'enu. It's a regular bracha as far as saying a Kadosh Baruch Hu as we go into the nighttime, should protect us. So if that's what the Rambam understood, and that's the reason for the takana of Hashkivenu, how come it's not a hefsek between geula and Shmona Esrei?
Question though. We went to the National Library, and the guide there said he was showing us these pots to get shadim. Said there were no shadim in Israel.
Oh, okay. So the question on specifically shadim, maybe it could be that the Ritva said, when I was drafted, I was already 30. They don't do this anymore. But thank God I was like the last. My brother-in-law, Sammy, made Aliyah just right after that. They didn't take him. I think they figured out that it's not worth it for them.
Sorry, dentist.
And he volunteered service, and they didn't want. But I got drafted in those days. Remember what was that called? Temporary. Yeah, and we came in for the first 5 years. We were temporary residents. Toshavari. They had that. Couldn't vote, but I wasn't drafted. At 30, I got in. Thank God. I always tell my Talmidim, like I said, that I had that existential pleasure, which you can't express in words. When you stand, I did it on the Jordanian border. When you stand on that border and you're eyeballing the Jordanian soldier across from you, and you know that your people and your land is protected behind your back because you're standing there, such an amazing, amazing feeling. There's no words for it exactly. So thank God I was over there. But before I went out, I was talking to a Rebbe of mine. I said, it's really frightening. You're out there alone at night. What about the shadim? What about whatever's things that go bump in the night that are out there with you? So he told me that. He said, in Eretz Yisrael, it's such Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael, they don't allow the shadim in. So he told me it's a practical thing. Huh?
Standing on guard against them.
Standing on guard. That's how you have my Tehillim, right? So anyway, but the thing is that, so the Ritva talks about, so forget about the shadim over here, so say that Kol Davara, Yishmor Tzisinu. But again, it's not thematically the same thing as Geul Yisrael. So the general approach to this you'll find in the Acharonim is number 8 on your page. There's a concept that we called Haim Amru Vehaim Amru, or Haim Tiknu Vehaim Tiknu. What does it say? Haim, meaning the Chachamim, Moshe Amru Khan, or that's like they made a takana here, they have the right to be able to undo their takana and slip things in differently if they see the need for it. When you're dealing with the Rabbanans, that's how it's gonna, you get those options. So the most famous is, we're at 8, we're gonna be this number 2 and 8. This is famous. We all love this because it rhymes, right? Gemara and Pesachim, when they're talking about the order of Kiddush and Havdalah, Yak Nahaz. Everyone knows Yak Nahaz. All right, we grow up with it. Amar Abaye, the order of brachas is going to be Yayin Kiddush. So Abaye says Yayin Kiddush Zman near Havdalah, so that's Yak Zana. And then Rava Amar Yayin Kiddush near Havdalah Zman Yak Nahaz. That's the order of the brachas. Now we all know, and every time we say Kiddush, Yayin, whenever you do a bichas and obviously you have to say, go right into the getting hana. You don't make a separation out. In fact, the halachas are is that you're about to eat something, right? The real halachas would be that you have to have the item in your hand, and you have to mamash, over extremely, right? Have the item you're going to eat in your hand. You have to think before you say the bracha, before you say Shem Hashem, what's going to be the end of the bracha. You have to have that. I remember one year on my first day, I was trying to tell this to my Talmidim. I just met them. It was the beginning of the year. I had a cookie in my hands. I said, the way to do it, you have to have it in your right hand. You got to stare at the thing. No, I'm going to say Mazonos on the cookie. And then I had the cookies. I said, Baruch Atah Hashem with a lot of kavanah, Elokeinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem mina. The guys are laughing away until I realized what I had done. So I said, okay. But it broke the ice and it was a great year. But you're supposed to have the thing. So over here, I just said a Borei Pir Guf, and how is it I can start throwing in Kiddush and Ner and Zman, Havdalah, all these things. So that's a perfect example of Heim Amru ve'Heim Amru. Chachamim said that that's usually the way you do it, unless we have some kind of overriding principle. In this case, it's all these other brachas that we feel it's important to throw in. You still have the kosher bracha in your hand. That's why you're supposed to always have the kosher bracha. Right? Even in Havdalah, or you take the besamim, so you have the kos in your right hand, you put it down, but you pick it up in your left hand, and then you take the besamim in your hand in the right. But you always have that kosher bracha with you, because that kosher bracha is covering over everything that's coming. So that's by a bris also. Like we always do this. That's a case of Heimamu. A fancier case is the Gemara in Gittin. That's number 1. Okay, 8. We're at number 8, but we're looking at number 1. Gemara in Gittin. There the Mishnah talks about Hamevi get me Medinas Hayam Tzorch Sheyomar Befanai Nichtav Befanai Nechtam. So not to get into that much details on this Gemara, but the Gemara there says that a person, we know that the pasuk says the Katav La Sefer Krisus V'Nasan La V'Nasan B'Yada. You have to give over that the get has to be written l'shem in kavana, that it's going to be written specifically for this woman. So therefore, let's say you're bringing a get me Medinas Hayam from overseas to Eretz Yisrael. So the aide, when they walk in, Sorch Shiomar B'Fanai Nechtam has to walk in and say, I know for a fact, B'Fanai Nechtam, that this get was written in front of me, Lishma. It had in mind the exact woman that I'm bringing the get to give to. So the Gemara asks over there, Ularava the Amar, what's the reason for this? The Amar Lefi She'en B'Kiyin Lishma, because we were worried that maybe in the Chutz La'aretz they really didn't know the halacha. And therefore, when the get shows up in Eretz Yisrael, we want somebody to testify to the fact that when they wrote the get, they did write it for the name of this woman. So if that be the case, Liboy Trey, we should have 2 witnesses. Not that one person could come in from overseas holding the get, but 2 witnesses should come in. Midi dehavi kol eidiot shabatorah, because all eidiot, all the times that we have witnesses that establish a fact, you always need 2. Apishnei eidim yokum adavar. Pishnei eidim. So the Gemara answers, no, the truth is, Ro B'Kiyin. Really, they do know what they're doing in Chutzlah. They really did write the get for the name of the woman. However, skip the parentheses, Rabbanan Hu de Itzrich. The rabbis had on, they said, B'cholof, and they wanted to ensure this matter, and therefore they said that the guy showing up should be an additional proof. And being that this is totally a din d'Rabbanan, because of iguna reasons, therefore you wouldn't be able to find 2 guys who were coming, and they wouldn't be traveling. So because they wanted to simplify the process, that's why the rabbis were makel and allowed 1 aid in this case.
But this is written
in the Torah, isn't that a problem?
What?
Doesn't that go against what it says in Torah about Shnai Meidim?
No, so that's what the Gemara was asking. They said it's only a din because it's a whole thing from the beginning is a din d'Rabbanan. The Rai said sufficient. They wrote B'Kiyin. They do know how to write the Gittin. But it's because of the fact, so the rabbi said, we made it harder on people that we said we wanted to. Not harder, they were protecting. But now, because they're coming from Medinas Hayam, I want to make that simplify that process, so we're going to allow 1.
Why did they only need 1 Midoraita?
Midiraita, because the get is written, and in Chutz they know how to write the get, and it's a star like any other star. Eidei Chatima Kaimi. That's a machlokes in the Gemara, but they established that the fact that it's signed off is sufficient.
Well, this was written in Chutz La'aretz.
Yeah.
Don't you need two witnesses to verify the signatures of the two AD? Why don't you need two witnesses to verify?
So usually you don't on a deraisa level, but then the rabbis added on. The truth is, I have to look at the Gemara and get in a little bit more in depth, but it's working on a derabanan level, and this is an example where the rabbis cancel it. Yeah.
I wonder what the story of Ashkenazi, Yakna has, and even the story with the get, whether they said Ashkenazi and then they looked for a reason. In other words, they may have included it, maybe the way it happened was that they started davening Ashkenazi and then they had to look for a reason, but Smicha Gula to tefillah.
You know what?
Or in the case of the Yakna, they say, wait a minute, how do we
No, but what we're saying, when we get to Yiro Einenu, you're going to see something similar to what you're saying. But the stuff over here is, what's the process? What was the order of things? That would be fascinating to look into. Like when it gets to liturgy, what's the historical, production of it? The assumption over here is that the Gaal Yisrael concept that came earlier, and it seems like Hashkivenu was added on after.
Doesn't the Gemara say somewhere that it was, some said Hashkivenu, some said Gaal Yisrael, and then when the Chachamim came around, they put them together. The Hashkivenu was only said, Gaal Yisrael only said on Friday night. And
I'm not familiar with that with Hashkivenu, but Yiro Einenu, we're going to see that. Yeah.
The fact that Argit is a reshut doesn't make
So we'll see that by Euro. We'll see that momentarily by Euro Einenu. That's all going to come into play, right? Those are things like Hashkivenu is part of the Takana, and as they already we talk about that Yebavarch Shnaim Achareha also at Marav. So we're already in times of the Mishnayos. So these things, so that system is already in place early. So why could they do that? And that's where you have to say that the Chachamim, when they were talking Hashkivenu, they knew very clearly that the idea of Smichas Gula Tefillah, they made the exception. But the Rambam over here says that the way the Rambam understood it is Heimamru v'Heimamru. In other words, they made a takana. Originally, they wanted Gaal Yisrael to be connected up to the Smichas Gula Tefillah, and then when the Hashkivenu comes in, they said we could slip it in because, according to the Rambam, why it's not thematically similar at all, but there was importance for us to say the bracha of Hashkivenu at night, and therefore the rabbi said in this case we could put it in. Not that it's a geula arichta. It's not. Don't confuse or try to convince yourself. There's a better word for that, right? Don't try to convince yourself that it's a geula arichta. It's not. It's a bracha arichta, says the Rambam. You look at it as being one long bracha. In other words, that's not going to be the separation. It doesn't cause a problem dealing with smichas gula letfilah. So you got to have two approaches over here. Are you going to say that when you put in Hashkivenu, we see by the Talmidim, the Rabbeinu Yonah, that it's not considered hafsaka because thematically it's similar, and it's literally speaking, geula arichta is understood literally. And therefore, thematically you see that it's very similar. It's a little understanding. Or do you say that's not to be understood literally, kikul arichta? Just telling you, this is the Rambam, don't think that it's a separation. As far as we're concerned, halachically it's going to comply with kikul arichta. But it really is a bracha arichta. In other words, the rabbis were heimamru, and they threw it in over here. Two different approaches. So this is going to be helpful when we go on to the next piece that was put into, that you see in some of the Siddurim. Number 10 on your page. The Tosfos over there says, Doma Rabbi Yochanan, Ezu ben Olam Haba, that if you somich gula letfilah at night. So over here, Va'anu says Tosfos, Sha'omrim, Baruch Hashem li'olam amen v'amen, Yiru Einenu. It's that whole extra piece that we do very prominently in Chutz La'aretz. So the psukim and psukim acharim, achashkivenu, what about that, right? Isn't that going to be, that's going to be a big hefsek. Why isn't that a hefsek? So what is Tosfos right over here? Near a whole v'tikinu lahem rabbeinu, whole tikinu lahem rabbanan, havilei ki geula richta, So here the reason is because you got to imagine, I think this is the storyline, but you got to imagine people were working in the fields. They would come, gather in as night was coming in. They'd come in from the fields, gather in, let's say, at the gates of the town. And then you had the minyan, everyone's together over there. So they would quickly say Mariv together, or Arvis start out, get in Kaddish. And then it's getting really dark. And you want to get home by complete darkness. So they set it up. They didn't want to leave anybody out. Like you can imagine, everyone's davening. They finish up davening, and then and somebody's taking longer. And Shmona Esrei, so he's going to be left. Everyone's going to run home. He's left out in the dark. Lo Na'im. So in order to move things along quicker, they just did, the brachos Kriyat Shema. Then had a bunch of psukim, and the psukim are, I guess, there's 18 mentionings of God's name in those psukim connected to 18 brachot. Then everybody ran home. It got completely dark, and now you could just, at your own speed, you could daven Shmona Esrei in your house. Okay, davening. They were davening at the kaisel every night because they'd be in their home and they'd be davening, towards the wall of their house. So Tosfos says like this. He says, "Tetkinu lamar zeh shebetoch kach yispal chaveru gam hu v'lo yelech bebeit hakneset ad sheyigmor kol echad tfilato." You don't want people to be leaving anybody behind. Gam yesh ba'otam psukim yudchet askarot keneged yudchet brachot. You had that they tried to relate some way to the Shmona Esrei. Ba'agad shetiknu lehem otam psukim tiknu lomar chatima shel yiru einenu. So once they gave all those psukim, and it's Ke'ila Shmona Esrei, they put in a bracha at the end of Yiru Eineinu. Bracha Shem Yiru Eineinu. So according to this Tosfos, though, it's like, we threw it in over here, Tosfos is saying, but it's not, it's a takana of some sort to protect people from being left out in the dark. Right? Now, I didn't put on the page, but the Ramban and the Rashba, they said that in Lo Nogu Kain, that you don't say, it starts already, right, by the Ramban and the Rashba, that you don't say all those extra psukim. It's not the minhag. The gra in the Eretz, Yerushalayim for sure is the gra's minhag gra. We don't say Yiru Einenu here in Eretz Yisrael. But already by the Ramban it starts. Why? Why couldn't the Ramban allow us to say all those psukim? Because it's a hefsek. But they threw it in, whatever. It's a takana, they put it in there. It was in order to protect people from getting left in the dark. So it could be that the Ramban over here, what's in his mind? What are we allowed to add on? Gul Arichta we could add on. If something is thematically similar, Ashkivenu is thematically similar to the bracha of Gal Yisrael, so that's why I have Ashkivenu. It's like the Tamidim of the Rabbeinu Yonah. However, when you get to these psukim, they're not thematically similar. So why would I be able to put that in over here? It's not a Geula Arichta. It's going to be a Hefsek. And therefore, the Ramban says we don't do this minhag. What was Tosfos thinking? I need it. I can't leave people out. So I understand I'm not supposed to add in, but when the need is there, hey mamru, hey mamru. He's more on the seat of what we were talking about, the Rambam. The understanding over here, it's a bracha arichta. And the Chachamim are able to put in takanas when they see that there's a need. To leave somebody out in the Beit Knesset by themselves is not a fun thing, especially with all those shadim running around. Want to get home quickly, but it's not fun. You know what? We're not used to it. You ever been left in the dark, like really, like on a camp, in the campgrounds? You were really mamish in the dark. Before we left our shlichut, we went out west. I remember one night we camped in the state park next to Zion Park. And I remember that the bathrooms in these places are down the road. At night, it's really dark. And then as we pulled in, the guy at the gate, what's he called, the forest ranger, he said, "I just want to let you know that a couple of bears have been spotted down the road." I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Yeah, but don't worry about it. It's down the road." So why is he telling me this? So I had to
go down the road.
Don't go. So at night, I remember getting out and going to the men's room down the road. I have to admit, is it okay? Do I lose my my respect? I lose respect. I was a little frightened though. I'm walking with my flashlight. The whole place is pitch dark. But you don't want to leave somebody out there. So Chazal felt that they should throw it in. It's a skin the machlokes. How do you view these add-ons after Ga'al Yisrael? Let's do one more. Let's just do one more, and then we'll move on. Number 11 on your page. What's interesting is Rabbeinu Yonah is the one who tells us that the add-on hashkivein is a gula richta because thematically it's similar. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, and this you two gentlemen over here, you guys together, you'll see yourselves over here in Rabbeinu Yonah. Avamori Rabbeinu Yonah, it's the Talmidim speaking. I don't know, maybe that's the time. Natan tam leminhag shenagu kol ha'olam la'omram sheptechila yat tfilas arvis rishus. Hayu omrim ela psukim sheish behem yudchet haskara keneged yudchet brachot v'chot mimaleim v'omrim kaddish. Right? Originally tfilas arvis was a rishus, and therefore everything, and they added on these extras over here, and then yotzim v'achar kach afa pisha kavu chova. Once they established it as being a chova, nishah hadavar kama minhag rishon. So things stayed that it was grandfathered in to say these psukim. Rabbeinu Yonah seems to have to come up with a different reason other than the Tosfos. He says it was grandfathered in from the time that Tfilas Arvis was a Rishus. It would seem that the Rabbeinu Yonah had to put this in. Why? Because he has a different approach to things. So he's stretching over here. Why is it? It's not a heimamu v'heimamu. We didn't agree with that at the beginning. He has to come up with a reason why is it still there, these psukim of Yeroinenu, if we only say that it has to be thematically similar. So he's going to come up with an idea that once it was a rishus, then after it became a chovah, so things are already in place, and they left it like that. It's a little shver. Rabbeinu Yonah is a little bit more challenging. You guys could think about it if you come up till next week with it.
If you come late to shul, and the kahal is ready to say Shemon Esrei Mariv, you should daven directly with them, and then afterwards you say, right, so that then you don't have any smicha gula.
Correct.
Why is the halacha that way that you should say Shemon Esrei first?
Oh, so is that because it started as a rishus, or is that because that's a question in the Gemara and Brachos over here? Is this halacha that you have to do, or is this like ru'ui? Well, a lot of reasons we have Kaddish also.
Yeah, you're saying that you and Tzipor is more important than smicha gula.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And we also have the Gabbai feels free to shout out Yalev Yavo at that point. It's interesting. Sorchi Gadol more. What's the status of these statements for Rabbi Yochanan? More research, because it seems that it's more fluid in Mariv. Yeah.
So I understand this Yeruei Neinu because thematically it's similar to Shemon Esrei. But I don't understand about Kaddish. We don't say Kaddish in Shachris. Why do you have to say it in Ma'ariv? It doesn't make any sense.
Yes. Also, same good question. And it would seem that in spite of what they have as the original Takanas, that it's Tzorch Iyun. I have to research it more. Yeah. But the question really is that what you're pointing at is it would seem that when Rabbi Yochanan said this at Mariv, because the Iker Smichas Gula Tefillah and the Iker Yitzias Mitzrayim, as Rashi pointed out, is in the morning, it seems that Mariv is a more fluid. So I have to, that's pointing towards that. I know that's a discussion in the Gemara and Brachos. What kind of tokef, what kind of strength does the Smichas Gula Tefillah have at night? But it
there's
is
no Smichas Gula.
Right.
Okay. So
but at night,
apply. But by Myra, if you're going to say that, then why add in?
It's true, and therefore there is a distinction between the morning and at night. I have to do more research on that page. That's a different.
You just mentioned is that at night you can say Yalav Yavo.
Yeah.
In the morning you can't, and specifically because it's Smicha.
Right. So it seems that.
And the answer in the evening is we've already played games with Smicha Gula. That's my interpretation of the Mishnah Gura.
Or because we already have additions, so therefore it leads to other things. Again, I have to say to you that I know there's a distinction between the morning, which is the Iker Yitzias Mitzrayim, and the nighttime, and therefore it does come up that we do have a little bit more leeway at night. And the question comes up when Rabbi Yochanan says his add-on that even at Arvis, you're Ben Olam Haba, what's the strength halachically of that statement? I could look into it. I have to look into it more. It's on the page that I don't have 100% that. Okay, let's go on to another thing. So number 12 on the page is going to be within the same theme, but So Rav Shechter in his second Sefer Be'ikvei Hatzon, he talks about.
Answer how I think Rabbi Yonah specifically says that. Says. So the Kaddish originally for Arvis was the ending, and then when they brought everything together, they kept the Kaddish.
Oh, so you want to say that's part of the grandfather clause also with the Kaddish?
No, but the Kaddish was because they were going to go home, so they had to close it.
It goes back to the fact that Arvis Rosh Hashus. Yeah. Okay. There's more to learn. There's more to learn on the topic. Rabbi Alexandri. So we have the Gemara Bracha says a couple of things. They introduced this concept that of saying extra tachanunim, extra supplications at the end of the davening. Rabbi Alexandri Basar the Matzli, that when he used to finish up his davening, he would Amar Hachi. He would say like this: Ribona olamim galui v'yadua lefanecha shiratzonenu lasos ritzoncha umima akev seor sheba'isa v'shibud malchios. This comes up elsewhere in Tefillah, but he would add on a personal prayer that says that God, we want to do what you want, but what's bothering us, we get to the Yisor Shabbat, the Yetzer Hara, and then Yehiratzon, that we should be protected from it. There's a whole series of these. Rava, next paragraph, Basar Tzlusei, at the end of his davening, Amar Hachi, he would say, Elokai ad shalom natzarti eini kadai. Until I was created, I wasn't fit to be created. V'achshav shenotzarti, ki lo natzarti, what have I done? This obviously was adapted to high holidays, right? Maybe throw that in. So it comes from Rava originally. It's Amoraim. Mar Berei de Ravina, ki havi Messiah Tzelus. It's the Shmona Asay itself we know was enacted by Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. That's very early on in the Second Temple. But over here, these supplications, Tachanunim, are later on. These are the Amoraim in the Gemara, but yet it did make its way into our Siddur. Mar Berei de Ravina, Kabi Messiah Tzeluse, when he finished his davening on Mahachi, Elokai Netzor L'Shtoni Meira Usvasai Medaber Mirma. Whoa, he's got the winning lottery ticket. This made it into the end of our Shmona Asrei on a daily basis. But it's Marburei de Ravina's personal tefillah. So the question is, so you throw this in at the end of the Shmona Asrei. So it's interesting, says the Shulchan Aruch over here. Oh, let's put it this way. We already said on the previous page that besides Hashem Sefasai Tivtach, Chachamim added in another pasuk from Tehillim. Yehil Ratzanim Reifi Ve'yoni Bi Lefanecha. When I close up my Shmona Asrei, I'm going to finish up and I'm going to say, God, everything I just expressed to you, it should be accepted. That's a pasuk from Tehillim that becomes the end. That's how we close out our Shmona Asrei. The Gemara puts these things, they lump it all together. It would seem that Yehila Ratzon is also Tefillah Arich, that's part of the davening. The question is, so if I just finish up, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mevrechat Amo Yisrael V'Shalom, so what do I say next? Do I go straight to Elokai Netzor L'Shtoni Meira? What do we usually do? We usually say Yehila Ratzon and Reifi. Why? What am I assuming?
You're ending up with Gula.
Because it's a Tefillah Arich, right? That's part and parcel. It's an intrinsic part of the Shmona Asrei. So I have to say Yehila Ratzon, and then I go into the extra Tachanunim.
Hashem begins, Hashem accept, and then you end Yehila Ratzon, whatever I said, it will be accepted.
Right, and it's the same thing as Hashem Sefasai Tivtach. I know it's not doing a hefsek at this point, but the Gemara includes them all together. So you were to say, it seems that they're relating to it like that. That's how I was looking around at all the Sidurim. Yeah?
After Elokai Netzor, at the end they say Yehila Ratzon Od Pam.
Oh, you're fair. Mishnah Berurah. So we're going to see that inside. I was looking around in the house. Everybody has Yehila Ratzon and then Elokai Netzor L'Shtoni Meira. It took me a long time to dig this thing up. Okay, my friends, this thing, I don't know where I got it from. It says on a kaful. It must have been discarded from a library. It was like a duplicate copy. They didn't need it. And I think it says 1943. I don't know where this thing is from. It wasn't mine. It says to our mother from her dear children, Esther and Morris. Don't know who they are.
When was it printed?
And it doesn't say. It smells like early 1900s. Okay? All right, now look at this now. This is the best. You could come up with Hebrew Publishing Company. 77 Dalid Yud Lamed Ayin Nun Samech Yud. Delancey Street, New York. Okay? Doesn't have a printed in that. But this is a good old-fashioned Ivritach. It's in Yiddish. It's a Yiddish thing. And I was looking around, finally found it. Baruch atah Hashem, hamavareches amo yisrael b'shalom, elokai nitzor l'shoni meira. There's no Yehila Ratzon. It's only on the bottom. So they exist. Over the years I've seen it, and it's noticeable. We're so trained to say Yehila Ratzon right away. It would seem that what are we assuming? That Yehila Ratzon, because it's mentioned in the Gemara, is part of the Shmona Aseh. You need to finish up your Shmona Aseh before you could start doing personal Tachanunim. The ones who don't have it, like this Seyyid Machzor, they're going to say, no, the Takana is to say Yehila Ratzon, but it's obviously not a question on it. The question is, how can you slip in Hashkivenu? How can you slip in Hashem Sifasai Tiftach? Because I have a problem over there of connecting up Klal Yisrael, Gula to Smichlet. You have to be Somik Gula Tefillah. Yehila Ratzon is not a problem, but yes, it is included, but it just means that the Chachamim added that in, but it doesn't have to be part and parcel of the Shmona Aseh. Meaning that when I finish up all my supplications and the ones that I connected up to the Shmona Aseh, like kind of Tzol, just putting Yehila Ratzon at the very end. If you look in number 13 on your page, what do they say over here? Im bala hafsik. This has really, I remember, so, okay, number 13, Orach Chaim. Im bala hafsik, va'anot kaddish v'kedusha. You want to answer. It happens often, right? You're just a tad later than the beginning of the Chazaras Hashatz. And therefore, they got up to Kedusha. Or they Marv. And they're going to say Kaddish. You want to say Yesh Me'Rabba. So if you want to have a Hafsaka between Lanot, Kaddish and Kedusha, between your Shmona Aseh and the Yehila Ratzon, ain't no posek. The end of your Shmona Aseh is going to be Yehila Ratzon. Yehila Ratzon Mechlal HaTfilahu. We got the Shulchan Aruch learned it up. That the Yehila Ratzon is part and parcel of your Tefillah. Aval, once you say, therefore don't do Hafsaka, Aval ben Yehila Ratzon. After you say those words, L'shar Tachanunin, Shaper Dami. So once you've said Yehila Ratzon, you're in the middle of saying, and then you hear the Chazan saying, the Kadesh Shem Chabolam, you are allowed to answer those psukim, Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kvod Hashem Mimkomo. Just stop anyway and listen, even the Shmona Aseh, to listen to the Kedusha. But once you get past that Yehila Ratzon, according to Shulchan Aruch, you're in the middle of your Tachanunim, but at this point everything goes, and you can add on, the Kedusha and Yesh Me'Rabba. You could add on. Afterwards, look at the Ramah. The Dafka b'makom shenogim lomar Yehila Ratzon miyad achar tefillah. Ava makom shenogim lomar Tachanunim kodem the Yehila Ratzon, like it's printed in my Ivritach. Mafsi gam kein lekadish Kedusha. Because the second that you finish up, I'm Mavarachas Amo Yisrael B'Shalom, you finished your Shmona Aseh, and now everything goes earlier.
So either way, Ramah saying either way.
It depends on the place, the Minhag HaMakom. Yeah. Then the Mishnah Berurah says, Tachanunim, V'tov lomar Yehila Ratzon kodem HaTachanunim v'achareim. Do it both, okay? Because you want to comply with the fact that Yehila Ratzon might be an integral part of the Shmona Aseh. So as soon as you say, I'm Mavarachas Amo Yisrael B'Shalom, say Yehila Ratzon. Then you throw in Tachanunim. But to finish up the whole process of standing in front of God before you take your 3 steps back, it's appropriate to say Yehila Ratzon. It's grabbing both ends of the candle. Yeah?
Let's say that it's permissible to make a personal request before the Yehila Ratzon. Is that a hefsek?
So that's going to be the Smachlokas. We are saying personal requests. The Elokai Nitzol Shoni Mira is a personal request that we've adopted because it's so.
Before you.
So most of our Sidurim have thrown Yehila Ratzon in before Elokai Nitzol Shoni Mira. But you still have some that you could find that don't. So that machlokus might be based upon, again, do you consider these add-ons an integral part, like Ga'ula Richta? Hashkivenu is similar thematic. It's Ga'ula. Hashkivenu is Ga'ula. Hashem Sifasai is Tefillah. Yehila Ratzon is Tefillah. Or do you say that Yehila Ratzon is not like the other two, and therefore it's just a catch-all, but it's not an integral part of the Shmona Aseh, and therefore we're just going to say at the end of everything of all of Tachanunim.
Similar to adding names in Refuah. I mean, that never was there, and then we added on
names,
specific names. And Shema Koleinu, we give ourselves leeway.
I always thought there was a difference between the Chazan davening and the Tfilat Yachid. Tfilat Yachid, you can add as many things after the Tfilah, whereas the Chazan doesn't. He's got to get on with the Tachanun and or whatever.
Right.
So he just says Yilarotzon and gets on with it.
But a lot of people, you're right, what you're bringing up, a lot of times you'll see that there are Chazanim or Shliach Tzibors that they say Yilarotzon, they finish up and they do say the Yilarotzon, right? And some people...
Yeah, just the Yilarotzon and then get on.
Right, because why? If you say Yilarotzon is an integral part of the Shemona Esrei, so the Shliach Tzibor has to say it, it's part of his Shemona Esrei. They say in the name of the Rav, that Rav Soloveitchik, that he used to instruct that both Hashem Sifsai Tivtach and the Yilarotzon has to be said out loud by the Shliach Tzibor because they're an integral part of the davening. It's the same. It's like a machlokas that's going, pretty.
There was a problem Amen at the end of Ga'al Yisrael. It's at Hafsaka. So when I'm actually I say Baruch Atah Hashem and then I'm quiet.
Which one?
Yeah. Okay. Let's just do one more before we run out of time. So it says like this. Gemara and Brachos. This is fun. All right. Number 14. All right. The Tanya. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omar Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Pa'amim she'adam korei kriyat shema shtei pa'amim bayom. It's possible. You can say kriyat shema twice. Achat kodem ha'netzach chama. One is before sunrise. Achat la'achar ha'netzach chama. Right, and one is after netzach chama. In other words, the kriyat shema of the daytime you say after sunrise, and the kriyat shema of Mariv, you fell asleep on it, you say it right before Netzach Chama. It's after Alos HaShachar, after the morning dawn, but it's before sunrise. You can still say it. V'yotze ben yedecha v'to achat shel yom v'achat shel laila. Right? Oh, okay. And you'll be yotze with both, saying the Kriyat Shema of Mariv and the Kriyat Shema of Yom. Gemara asks, hagufa kasha. That's a question, because on the one hand, Amarta Pamim Shadam Korei Kriyat Shema Shtei Pamim Bayom, that you could say Kriyat Shema twice in a day. Alma Kodem HaNetzach Chama. So it would seem therefore that before sunrise, but after Alot HaShachar, dawn, Yamamu, we consider it to be day, which is true. We always consider that after Alot HaShachar B'di'evet, you could do all the mitzvahs that are tied into the day. Today Alot HaShachar is at 5:09, and the Netz is at 6:23. Once 5:09 comes around, it's daytime. But yet, so we say that this is day. But then you say Hadar Tani, you come back in this price and you say Yotze Behen Yidei Chovato, Achat Shel Yom Ba'achat Shel Laila. So wait a second. You're davening that Kriyat Shema after Alot HaShachar, before Netzach Chama, it's a good hour plus. So Amalaylo, you're calling it nighttime. You're allowed to daven Kriyat Shema the night. So what is it? Is that time period from dawn, Alot HaShachar, till Netzach Chama, sunrise, is it night or is it day? So Gemara says, Lo li'olam yamamahu. It really is daytime. And you can do all the mitzvahs that are dependent upon the day. V'hu dekari le'layla, that which they called it in the Gemara nighttime, the ikinchi deganu b'hi shata. We're just referring to the fact that of night, that people are still sleeping at that time. Why is that important? Because Amar Rabbi Acha Bareda Rabbi China, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Halacha ki Rabbi Shimon, Sh'amar Mishum Rabbi Akiva. That, okay, all right, but what's happening over here? We understand that Kriyat Shema at night is not based upon nighttime. What's the pasuk? What's the word? The chiyuv of Kriyat Shema? B'shach becha. So we have actually in the beginning of Maseches Brachos, the first Mishnah. What's b'shach becha mean? You could understand it as being when you're going to sleep. And that's going to be Rebbe Lezer's, that the chiyuv of Kriyat Shema really starts in the first Ashmor, the first third of the night. Why? Because that's when people are laying down. Or do you say b'shach b'cha means when people are sleeping? And that's going to be the other opinion in the Gemara, that you could say Kriyat Shema throughout the entire night. Rabban Gamliel came by and said, no, we want to make sure that you don't, fall asleep and lose out. So therefore say it by Chatzos Halayla. Question is, if you wait till after Chatzos Halayla, what happens? It's interesting, Rabbeinu Yonah, that he also says that if you wait till after Chatzos Halayla, that you don't get the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. He says this is a good shir. I don't have it. He says that the rabbis have the ability to pull away from you the accomplishment of a mitzvah saseh. You say, I'm doing it. I have the whole night. Now the rabbis could say you're not going to get the schar for it. Interesting shir in its own right. But that's how it worked. So the idea though, the Kriyat Shema though, is based upon not nightfall, but b'shach lacha, when people are sleeping. So if you can take that approach, and I could, it's after Alos HaShachar, day has begun. Right? The famous stories about Reb Chaim Brisker, I think, that he's sitting the kids saw him in the middle of the night, sitting with his lulav and esrog. They said, what are you doing? Abba, Saba, what are you doing? He said, I'm waiting for dawn. As soon as dawn comes in, I've been waiting a year to accomplish the mitzvah. Alos HaShachar means it's day. I can accomplish the mitzvah. However, it's daytime. But if you didn't get a chance to do Kriyat Shema Shel Mariv, you could still accomplish it, because that's not there's still some people, the last people who are still sleeping, they haven't gotten enough. You can accomplish B'shach B'cha, B'diavad, Yefeh. This sounds like a crazy case, right? And as we know, crazy cases either teaches us theory, or it happens. It happened to me, this case, believe it or not. I was running a yeshiva and I was giving shir, so till I finished up on the phone calls at night, it was late. And then I used to put the kids to bed. I don't know if anybody's resonating, and to fall asleep with them, obviously, and then get up a couple hours later and start preparing shir. Huh? And then they're still awake. They're dancing on your head, right? And I used to get up then, and I remember getting up once. I must have sat down the couch. All I know, all of a sudden, it's like I wake up and it's 4:00 in the morning, and I'm sitting on the couch. And then I quickly I hadn't daven Mariv, and I took a look at the Zamanim. It was after Alos HaShachar, before Nates. So I was able to say Kriyat Shema at least, the Deraisa. Except the Gemara qualifies over here. Amar Rebbe Acha Bered Rebbe Chanina, Amar Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi, Halacha Rebbe Shimon, Shamar Shimon Rebbe Kiva, that you could do this. Amar Rebbe Zera Uvad Shelo Yomar Hashkivenu. Can't say Hashkivenu. Why not? Hashkivenu says, what's the meaning of the Hashkivenu Hashem Elokeinu Shalom? God, make us lie down in peace. Nobody's going to sleep at that point, at that hour of the morning. Shouldn't. So what do they mean? Don't say Hashkivenu. What do they mean over here? So it says over here, number 615, the Rush brings down, Rav Yitzchak Geyas Zal Kasav Lo Shelo Yomar Kol HaBracha. How can you cut out a whole bracha? That's not what they mean. It's mafurish Mishnah. You have to say 2 brachas after Kriyat Shema. Ela shelo yomar elo hamilot hashkivenu Hashem Elokeinu Shalom. Don't say the opener, the first 4. It's really 8 words of the beginning. Ela matchil v'taknenu be'etzu tova milfanecha. You say hashkivenu, but you can't say the words exactly. But you can start your bracha with v'taknenu be'etzu tova milfanecha v'shein l'man shemecha v'gein badenu. Says the Rush ve'ein mashma keperusho. That doesn't make much sense. You get rid of the entire bracha. How can you get rid of the entire bracha? How can you do that? Okay? So what is this machlokus really referring to again? The Maritz Gaius, what did he think? He said Hashkivenu is Kigul Arichta. It's exactly a chelik of the Gal Yisrael. So if it's Kagul Arichta, it's part of the whole theme over here. So of course you're going to get rid of Hashkivenu because that's lying. God's not putting you to sleep, but you got to keep that bracha. It's so important thematically. So you say the Hashkivenu bracha without the words Hashkivenu. But what's the Rush telling us? The Rush is saying you can't say Hashkivenu at this point in the morning because it's just not true anymore. Elama, how can I get rid of a bracha? Hey mamru v'hei mamru. In this situation, because it's the same theme, because in this situation, I can't say the brachas. You can't say the bracha. Don't say the bracha. It's okay. Chachamim are allowed to take away the bracha in this situation. I just got, and I'll answer the question now. Is that okay? There's a lot more on the topic. At the very bottom, number 18, you guys can look at on your own. The Rav Kook in Einayat talks about why specifically is Rabbi Yochanan pointing to Smichas Ga'ula Tefila at night as being a person who is Boteach as a Olam Haba. It's a very beautiful Rav Kook. It's good for the Shabbos table. But he just talks about, and Rabbi Chaim Yivlozhin talks about, that when we daven, we really have in mind not ourselves much, but a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We know it hurts a Kadosh Baruch Hu when things aren't good. We know it hurts a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Chil Hashem. So he says that night is always a reference to when things aren't so cheery. So when things aren't so cheery, when everything's cheery during the daytime, So then, you can always have in mind the Kodesh Baruch Hu. When things are really bad, you want to say, God, get me out of this mess. You really start heading towards your own personal stuff. If at that point you're able to think in terms of the big picture of Am Yisrael, of the Ga'ula and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, so that's a person who's muftach shu ben olam haba. So there's a lot more. This topic is very long, but it's a beautiful topic. So, shkoyach to you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.